Hey y'all, welcome to the channel. Today we're checking out 10 ridiculous British myths.
Welcome to Watch Mojo UK, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 ridiculous British myths. For this list, we're looking at the strangest things some people might believe about the UK. Let us know in the comments if you've believed any of these tall tales.
Okay, first of all, Paul McCartney's grinning face is on the thumbnail of this video, so I assume they're going to talk about the Paul is dead thing, which, by the way, when I first heard about it, really creeped me out. Secondly, I think I saw Loch Ness, so they might mention Loch Ness.
Number 10. TV license vans. Chances are you've heard this story if you've ever considered trying to dodge paying a license fee. I have heard of that. Which you don't legally have to if you don't meet certain requirements. Allegedly, the BBC sends roving detector vans up and down the country, outfitted with state-of-the-art technology that can not only detect which houses and flats have active televisions, but what channels those TVs are tuned.
How do they do that?
Suffice it to say, technology like this doesn't exist, and it's certainly not being kept top secret by the BBC, just so they can fleece you out of 150 quid. Vans have been spotted around the country from time to time, but they're just an elaborate scare tactic, despite the BBC still claiming they work as recently as 2013.
What? Hang on. So the BBC made this up to scare people into paying their TV license fee? So weird. I remember hearing about these vans when I first learned about the TV license. Wikipedia says they're real, and they do have that technology. But how? What technology? It was thought that they operated by detecting electromagnetic radiation given off by a TV, although more usually the authorities receive details of TV sales from the dealer. Really? The most common suggested method was the detection of a signal from the TV's local oscillator. In 2013, the Radio Times obtained a leaked internal document from the BBC giving a breakdown of prosecutions for TV license evasion. The 18-page document gave a breakdown of the number of people evading the charge, as well as mentioning the number of people employed to catch those who do not pay their TV license. However, no mention was made of TV detector vans being used to catch such people, prompting media speculation over the truth of their existence. The BBC rejected claims that the vans are a hoax. Quote, detector vans are an important part of our enforcement of the license fee. We don't go into detail about how many of them there are or how they work, as this information might be useful to people trying to evade the fee. Lies. They went through a lot of trouble to sell that lie, like my parents' marriage.
Number 9. The Windsor Spiders. The papers had a field day with this baffling story all the way back in 2001, when it was claimed that BT engineers found a den of massive venomous spiders underneath Windsor Castle. Though papers also reported that the spiders were poisonous, which they'd only know if somebody had tried to eat one. The so-called experts said that the species was, in fact, brand new and was about 5 inches long, including the legs. So what were these terrifying giant spiders? Well, they were the almost completely harmless European cave spider, which lives across numerous continents. But would you believe when the papers found out the spiders were very common and not dangerous, they stopped reporting on the story entirely?
I think it's more interesting that there are tunnels under Windsor Castle. It's an extremely exciting find because they are probably a new species or species that we thought had been extinct in this country for thousands of years. That's a pretty big spider. Another lie.
Number 8. London Bridge Auction. Big Ben, St. Paul's Cathedral, the London Eye,
Bridge.
These are all major London landmarks recognisable around the world. But in 1968, a rich American, Robert McCulloch, tried and failed to buy another iconic landmark, Tower Bridge, so that he could have it shipped across the Atlantic to be rebuilt in Arizona. However, there was a miscommunication and he mistakenly bought Old London Bridge instead. At least, that's what you may have heard. In actuality, only half of this story is true. London Bridge was shipped overseas and rebuilt by McCulloch in Arizona after he won the auction, but he never once thought he was actually buying Tower Bridge. He was perfectly happy with his bizarre purchase in reality.
Okay, so the myth is that the guy who bought London Bridge thought he was buying Tower Bridge. That's not a very exciting myth. Where exactly in Arizona is this? Lake Havasu City. Show me on a map. Oh, okay. Y'all, I go to Flagstaff, Arizona occasionally, and I drive by this place. But I never think to go check it out. How far is that from the interstate? 34-minute drive. That adds an hour. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. It's already a 7-hour drive. It's beautiful, though. The London Bridge has a beautiful retirement.
Number 7. St. George and the Dragon. The 23rd of April each year marks St. George's Day, the day we celebrate the patron saint of England. The famous legend says that St. George slew a fearsome dragon to rescue a princess. But did he really? Bizarrely, there are people who believe that he did slay a dragon, despite dragons never having existed. But he also wasn't English, and historians variously believe he may have either come from central Turkey or as far south as Palestine. It's thought that the story is derived from similar stories in ancient cultures, and that it could be inspired by a story of someone killing a crocodile or is simply an allegory for the devil.
St. George. There's an island in Florida I used to go to a lot called St. George. Now I know why it's called St. George. Never even thought of it. According to tradition, he was a soldier in the Roman army. He was sentenced to death for refusing to recant his Christian faith. I feel like I've heard the story of him killing a dragon to save a princess. It feels like that's the most medieval tale told, doesn't it?
Number 6. The Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight is, of course, very real, and was a favourite holiday spot of Queen Victoria. But a popular urban legend claims that you can fit the entire population of Earth on the Isle of Wight if you packed us all in like sardines. There's a few ways to do the maths on this, depending on what the world's population is and how many people you decide to stick into 1 square metre. But no matter your method, the conclusion is always the same. No, you really can't fit the entire population of Earth onto this one island just off the south coast.
How big is Island of Wight? Show me on a map. Isle of Wight. It sure is beautiful, isn't it? Oh, I mean, it is a giant island. It's huge. It's the largest island in England. The name Isle of Wight may mean place of the division. I could see why people would believe this, because that's a gigantic island.
Number 5. Alien big cats. Sometimes called phantom cats instead, you've probably seen stories to this effect crop up in local newspapers, as they appear regularly. Essentially, somebody snaps a photo of a cat that looks a bit too big, and it does the rounds in the media, with some theorising that the cat might be a big cat on the prowl in Britain, like a panther or a leopard.
Okay.
Ultimately, loose big cats have been found in the country when they've been illegally smuggled in as exotic pets. A loose puma was even caught in Inverness in the 1980s, but the belief that there's a wild and growing population of jungle cats somewhere in the UK persists, with many going out to look for evidence.
Y'all, don't underestimate those big cats. That could be real. There's no native population of big cats living in the UK. It says there's no native population. I don't know, man. They can sneak around. I think they're out there.
Number 4. Wild haggis. Adults know what haggis really is, but the wild haggis myth is something you might have played along with for a joke with young children. If they're heading to Scotland, tell them to look out for wild haggis roaming the Highlands. The legend of the wild haggis is such an extensive inside joke that there are many drawings of the haggis and even elaborate fake taxidermy creatures. Some even say that the haggis's legs are shorter on one side of its body so that it can better climb the steep mountains. Shockingly though, it's not just children. Many tourists visiting the UK, primarily Americans, have also been found to believe that the wild haggis is a real animal.
That's hilarious. It does look like an animal of some kind. Someone took a skunk and put beaver fur on it. I guess if you don't know what haggis really is, I would totally believe that.
Number 3. The Loch Ness Monster. While we all know, deep down, that Nessie probably isn't real, you'll struggle to find a Brit who doesn't really want to believe that she's out there in Loch Ness.
I want it to be
Hunting
real.
the Loch Ness Monster is also a major draw for tourism in Scotland, with many Americans believing in her, just like they believe in wild haggis. Despite all the science saying there's no way a huge lake monster could be living up there, both because of how long she would have had to be alive, and because it's not clear what she'd be eating, the legend persists. Even with all the debunked hoax photographs, Nessie remains beloved.
Yeah, I think this photo found to be fake. The guy who took it, I think he admitted on his deathbed that it was a little toy that he carved. In hindsight, you can tell because of the size of the waves, they're a little too large to be just regular lake water, don't you think? I would love it if it was real, to find a dinosaur in a lake.
Number 2. Paul McCartney is dead. Widely dubbed music's biggest conspiracy, there's a popular belief that Paul McCartney died in a car accident in 1966. People point to alleged clues in Beatles lyrics and the design of their album covers, saying that lines in Sgt. Pepper say that not only was McCartney replaced with a lookalike, but that his lookalike's name is Billy Shears. Even today, people analyse McCartney's face and say he looks different from how he did before 66, and the rumours got so out of hand that Life magazine headed to McCartney's house in 1969 to investigate.
Hey, pardon me for asking, but who's that little old man?
What little old man?
That little old man.
Oh, that one, that's my grandfather.
Even decades on, and people still believe McCartney perished all that time ago.
That's ridiculous. So the story is that Paul died in a car accident, and then the Beatles and their manager auditioned, or there was a Paul McCartney look-alike contest, and this guy won named William Shears, and then he got plastic surgery to look even more like Paul McCartney. Here's the thing that totally disproves it. His voice. His voice didn't change from 65 to 67. Same voice. Also, who's writing all these Paul McCartney songs? You think it's that easy to do a Paul McCartney impression and to come up with these songs? Who wrote Hey Jude? I guess John could have, but he's not the kind of guy to just give away a song, you know? It is a really fascinating myth, though. And whoever went around looking for all the little clues had a lot of time on their hands. The Sgt. Pepper album cover, the ground in front of where everyone is standing is dirt, and it looks like a grave. And there's a section of flowers that looks like it says Paul. There's also, on the bass drum, if you put a mirror in the middle of it, it says 1x1, he dead. And the he, between he and dead, there's a little arrow that points up at Paul. Oh yeah, and the Abbey Road album cover. Apparently, when people are buried, they're usually buried without shoes on. And in the Abbey Road album cover, Paul's not wearing shoes, he's wearing a suit. And the legend is that John, over here in the white, is the priest. Ringo is the pallbearer. Paul is the corpse. And George is the gravedigger. They're all dressed appropriately. Oh, and at the end of Strawberry Fields, in the fade out, John is saying cranberry sauce, but it's so quiet that it sounds like he's saying, I buried Paul. Oh, also on the Abbey Road cover, the Volkswagen Beetle, but you can't see it in this picture, but the license plate says 28 if, as in Paul McCartney would have been 28 if he was still alive when Abbey Road was made. There's a lot of little clues like that. I'm not going to go through them all, but when I first learned about that in college, it creeped me out. It's not true, though, yo. It's not true. How could anyone fake that talent and that voice, you know? Can't be done.
Maybe it can be done. Hello, this is Paul McCartney. How are you doing? I'm doing all right. You should watch JJLA Reacts. It's the best American reacting to British stuff that there is. Jay Foreman said it's what a reaction channel could be. How's that?
Number 1. Queen Bess was a man. Can a woman really rule an entire country? Well, no, not according to some pseudo-historians and conspiracy
I
theorists.
haven't heard that.
There is no proof against the Lady Elizabeth.
She's plainly guilty.
What need is there of proof?
For years, a strange story that Elizabeth I died as a child and was replaced by a young boy, who then grew up to be the queen, has circulated among some people. As
Ooh, that's
evidence,
juicy.
They cite her lack of heirs, refusal to marry, and military skill.
The Queen is dead! Long live the Queen!
However, everybody who actually knows about the subject knows that this story is completely wrong. After all, wouldn't Henry VIII have noticed if his daughter got swapped? Plus, many women choose not to
Probably.
get married or have children, and can rise through the ranks of the army if they're allowed to join.
Lord Robert has committed treason. It must be made example of.
And I will make an example of him.
Do you agree with our pigs?
Kate Blanchett's amazing. This is a juicy one, y'all. This probably came from the fact that she was amazing and very intelligent and highly skilled at her work, and some sexist jerks didn't want to believe that a woman could do that, but they can. Can you imagine being that boy? Just imagine. If you were a boy who happened to look like the queen-to-be, and they told you they're gonna castrate you, and you have to be a woman for the rest of your life. The queen, so perks, but wow, what a life. Can you imagine? That would actually make a really good movie, I think. What would that do to a person? They must lose any sense of grounding in reality. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you'd get used to it. How often does the subject of whether you're a man or a woman actually come up anyway? People just infer it by the way you look and sound and behave. This is a juicy myth, though. I like it. I like whoever came up. Well, no, I don't. But someone needs to make a movie about this. I bet they have. What happens if I just type in Elizabeth I was a man? Many misogynists and conspiracy theorists have argued that due to her extraordinary leadership qualities, noted academic brilliance, and financial acumen, Elizabeth must have been a man. An overwhelming amount of evidence declares this notion to be false and discriminatory. It totally is. They just could not believe that a woman could do that. Yeah, her father was Henry VIII. He's no dummy. Or was he? I don't think so. Maybe he knew. Maybe he was the one that made it happen. He had trouble getting heirs, didn't he? Wasn't that whole thing? Like, he went through a couple wives for that. Oh, when Elizabeth sat on the English throne, the concept of a female monarch was still highly unusual. Monarchy and stagecraft in general were a male domain in the minds of most of her subjects. This, coupled with the fact that she never married or had children, seemed to transgress all that was expected of women by her contemporaries. Her childhood tutors took note of her precocious ability. Her mind has no womanly weakness. Perseverance is equal to that of a man. Y'all, maybe she was a lesbian. Even in her lifetime, there were rumors about her sexuality, her gender. She was seen somehow as an oddity, that you simply couldn't have a woman this brilliant, this gifted, that she had to be something physically that made her like this. Jeez. Oh, this one person said that her handwriting changed. He claims there's a real difference in the style and in her comprehension. I've never heard that one. That's amazing. That's juicy. Juicy juice. Yeah, I do agree with the order of these. The spider thing, who cares? The TV vans, I mean, that's kind of juicy. The bridge, the London Bridge, the guy thinking he bought the Tower Bridge, not very juicy. George I fighting a dragon, I mean, not juicy. Isle of Wight, everybody fitting on it. That's like fun fact that turned out to not be a fact. Still fun, though. The big cats, that's kind of like a more believable version of Bigfoot. Haggus being an actual animal is hilarious. The Loch Ness Monster, classic myth. I want that to be true. Y'all, Loch Ness is beautiful. Paul McCartney's dead, and Elizabeth was a man. Yeah, very interesting myths. Too bad none of them are real. Oh well. Well, thank y'all for watching this with me, and I'll see you next time. Later.